All right. So this is a straight razor, pretty sharp. That's what we call it. It can cut. It's pretty sharp. I'm pretty skilled at using this. I can shape my mustache, my goatee, give myself a line sometimes. I was able to shape women's eyebrows when I worked in a hair salon, which I did for a number of years. So I've become very proficient at using what we call a straight razor. But I was not always skilled at using this. When I was about 13, 14 years old, and I was just starting to grow what one older mentor of mine called chin whiskers, and I was excited. I would brush it down, and I was real excited about that. So I would see my father in the bathroom using a straight razor to shave himself, which he did as long as I can remember, his entire life pretty much. And he had the big leather strap. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a barber strap, and he was a barber as well, but he was doing this before he was a barber. And he would sharpen that razor, and it would be sharp just like you saw me cut that paper. And he'd put it up to his face, and he'd shave himself. So one day, as I was growing my own, starting a little bit, I saw my father in the bathroom, and I asked him, I said, Dad, how do you keep from cutting yourself with that razor? And he paused just long enough with razor in hand. He said, Well, then he looked at me and said, Well, you got to remember, that's your face, and you've got the razor in your hand. And he continued shaving. Now that's some pretty simple logic. I don't remember what I said after that. I don't I have no idea what I said after that, but all these years later, long time from age of 13 and 14, I remember those words, you got the razor in your hand. That's your face. You have the razor in your hand. And that's the root of this message. Now I know that men may be able to relate to the idea of a straight razor a little more, maybe because they shave themselves, or women might recognize it if you've ever maybe had your eyebrows arched, or maybe you've even used it yourself. But it's the point of your face, you have the razor in your hand, and I want to make that analogy into the razor is your responsibility and the face is your life. You have the responsibility in your hands for what happens in your life. You are ultimately responsible. You can't go through life blaming somebody else. Well, they did this to me. No, you've got the razor in your hand, and that's your face. So, what are you doing with that responsibility? Well, one of the things that he stressed to me kind of throughout my life is that you've got to pay attention and that you've got to develop some skills. So it's not just a matter of starting to shave or just taking responsibility and doing something. You have to pay attention and you have to develop some skills to keep from injuring yourself. The reality is you're dealing with something that could cause some damage to you. It could cause you some problems if you don't handle this properly. And so obviously there's going to be some people who will say right off, well, you can't be responsible for everything that happens to you. What about genetically? You or we are genetically predisposed to having certain things happen. We could be predisposed. We have nothing to do with that. It's in our genetics. It's in our DNA. Let's start off with that. So it's true that you may be genetically predisposed to maybe diabetes, maybe blood pressure issue, high blood pressure or cholesterol or arthritis or obesity or dementia possibly, or it could be any medical condition that you could be predisposed to have. Um, but are you paying attention? Are you paying attention to what's in your genetic line? See, a lot of times when you go to the doctor will ask you the question, say, well, in your family, do you have a history of cancer? Do you have a history of hypertension in your family? So, how much attention are you paying to that? Let's say your mother's line. Do you know what's in the health line of your mother that you're paying attention so that you now can take responsibility for what happens in your life because there's a predisposition, maybe to substance abuse? Are you paying attention? What about your father's line? How knowledgeable are you about what could be in your family line in the DNA? Have you paid attention to it? And then have you taken responsibility to develop the skills to override things that you may have a genetic predisposition towards? Have you taken that responsibility, develop the skills? How do you override something or address something that you may be genetically predisposed to have happen in your life? The razor is in your hands. That's your life, your responsibility to do that. But here's something else I want you to consider about that. And I've had doctors to tell me, and I've several doctors I've heard talk about this at other points. And they've said a lot of times the people who say that they are genetically predisposed to have certain conditions that's in their DNA, he says not really true. They said the truth is that people are following the same behavioral patterns that their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles did. Maybe the same eating habits or the same lack of exercise or the same smoking habits or whatever it could be. In some cases, things that we have called genetic predisposition is actually a following of the same behavioral practices that our parents before us or somebody before us passed on. And we are creatures of habit because they say almost 95% of the things we do today are the things we did yesterday. And we're not even conscious about it because we're not paying attention to what happens or what has happened. So we end up following those same patterns. That it's our life, the razors on our hands. We are ultimately responsible for our health, our happiness, and our well-being. Ultimately, now others are going to say, well, what about the random acts of things? Things can randomly happen. You see that on the news all the time. There was a random act of this, and you can't be responsible for what randomly happens or the unexpected. Absolutely right. We can't be responsible for everything outside of us that happens, and those things can possibly happen. That's a given. But we have to also consider that sometimes things that may appear to be random are not random at all. I used to show this video of these young males who had been they were having some kind of disability because they were in a wheelchair or crippled or something because of decisions they made earlier. And there's one guy in there who would say in the video, he said, they told me it was a wild party before I went, but I went anyway. So he put himself in a situation where it seemed like it was a random shooting that happened, but he chose to be in that area. And there are some things when you look at it, people have made a decision to put themselves in high risk kinds of environment. So if a person is a predator or a criminal, wouldn't they look for somebody who is not paying attention, walking along at night with headphones on? Or if they want to catch somebody that they can maybe overpower, wouldn't it be smart to maybe hang around bars and wait until people might be getting out closing time? Because they can assume if you're coming out at closing time, you probably weren't spending the whole time in there drinking fruit punch and sparkling water. And there's a greater chance of that. So the point is that some of the things that we say are random or unexpected, there might have been some things that we could do to prevent some of those things happening. It's our face, it's our life. The razor is in our hands. Uh, that sound is my dog who has decided that this is the time for him to have a little refreshment. So he's drinking water on the side. This is live, so that's the way that goes. Uh, We'll let him finish taking a few sips. So I guess he's pretty thirsty. So so I'm, I may have to cut this out. I don't know if he keeps going on and on. We'll see. Um, so we can look at um, other areas. We'll try and pause for just a second here. See if we can get past uh, some of his hydration period here. I think we made it through. So let's look at relationships, right? The relationships that we have to remember it's our relationship. The responsibility is in our hands. The razor is in our hands. The responsibility is in our hands to decide how you're going to handle it. How are you going to manage this relationship? What are you prepared to do? Are you paying attention? A lot of times people will be in relationships and it may go sideways and not work out. And they'll think, man, I had no idea. I was caught completely off guard. I didn't know he or she was thinking this way or would have done this or that. Sometimes when you look closely, they weren't really paying attention. Have you developed the skills so that in your relationship things work the way you would like them to work? Are you paying attention? Have you developed the skills? What does that look like for you relationship wise? Even as far as your job, some people complain about things on the job or the job itself. Are you paying attention that the job that you originally signed up for, is it still moving you in the direction that you want to go in? Are you paying attention? Have you developed the skills to move to a different job, to move to a different position, to do something different? You've got the razor in your hand and it's your face. You have the responsibility in your hand. Are you paying attention? Are you developing the skills to get the outcome that you want to have without injury, without problems going on? Same thing is true with our health. Are we paying attention so that we can do what's necessary as we get older? We have to pay attention to things that our body processed and managed a certain way when we were younger. At this age, whatever your age is that you're watching this, our bodies do not process things the same way it did 10 years ago, but it keeps score. It adds up everything that you've been doing. Are we paying attention to see that, man, my body's responding differently? Are we developing the skills necessary so that we don't injure ourselves in the long run and we can stay healthy and be around as long as possible? Are we developing those skills? Even as far as our finances, are we doing what we need to do? Paying attention, monitoring our budget. My one cousin reminded me years ago, you can't manage what you don't monitor. So are we monitoring our finances and how we're spending and where we're spending? And are we developing skills? Do we have financial literacy so that we can effectively manage our money? It's our responsibility, our finances, and the razor or responsibility is in our hands. That's that's what this is about. So, to my father's credit, a few years later, when I would still kind of be wondering how to develop the skill, he would take that straight razor and roll up his sleeves and wet his arm. He had hair on his arm. And he would take the razor and say, see, here's how you do it. And he would shave. I'm not going to do that right now. And he would shave the hair off his arm. He said, this is how you do it. So here's what we learned from that. The final lesson is that sometimes we need a mentor. Sometimes we need someone to help demonstrate to us how you pay attention, um, how you develop the skill to improve your health, to improve your finances, to improve your relationship, to improve situations on your job. Sometimes we need a mentor to give us hands on, step by step instructions of how to manage and how to function uh, successfully in getting through life and whatever it is that we're doing. But the message ultimately is this: it's our face, it's our life, it's our health, it's our finances, and the razor Responsibility is in our hands. I wish you well with this.